I think we're ready to go. And sorry about that. It always just takes a minute for Zoom and Facebook to get synced. Welcome to your Health Made Simple webinar series. My name is Tracy Gowler, and I am the owner of Your Health Made Simple. I help women over 40 improve the way they live with Hashimoto's through structured healing programs. And I started this webinar series to provide education about additional modalities to help the Hashimoto's and autoimmune healing journey, and to provide actual healing stories from my clients because healing is possible. This week, I don't have a guest to share with you as I have for the last several weeks. I thought I might spend some time talking about my own story and why I started Your Health Made Simple. It's hard for me to look through the FB comments, the Facebook comments, while I'm talking. So what I figured I would start doing is to hold the webinar, and at the end, if there is some time, as I do have a hard stop at the end of the hour, I will turn off the recording and get to some of the questions if you want to hang around. So I was struggling with how to approach this session of the webinar series. What do I say without getting lost in my history? And without lecturing all of you to take responsibility for your health. So I'm not going to do that, although I will get a little bit into my history without getting too carried away. But there are a couple of things that I do want to focus on, and I do want to say that I've spent the last 7 or 8 years on my health, and I am able to trace the decline of my health and really understand some of the players in that decline. And I don't want to take up all of our time by rehashing all those all of my health history, but I would like to get a bit of an overview for those of you that do struggle with Hashis. Sorry, I have a hair. Or another autoimmune illness, so that I want you to know that you aren't alone. And it is a lonely illness because you don't always look sick, and people don't understand how difficult it is for you. And if you're watching because you have a loved one that's ill, I want you to know that they are struggling very hard. But I also want you to know that there is hope. And I think I do want to start at the beginning. I will try to highlight the decline as I move through my history. I think it's important to understand how an autoimmune illness manifests. So first, let me start by defining autoimmune disease. It is an illness where your immune system attacks your own organs and or tissues. And the tissues or organs that are attacked are determined by your genetics. And your genetics don't necessarily have to be activated, but if you do have autoimmune, you have activated your genetics. Just as an FYI, cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease are all now considered autoimmune. And with autoimmune, the mechanism for illness is the same. You have to have 3 things to develop autoimmune. And I'm going to take a drink here really quick before I end up coughing like crazy, since I am going to be talking for the better part of close to an hour. So hold on. Somebody asked me once if I drink from a pail. It is close to a pail. I do drink a lot of water during the day, so hold on. All right, so 3 things to develop an autoimmune disease. Number 1, you have to have the genetic propensity, and your genes are going to determine the type of autoimmune that you have. You have to have leaky gut, and this is a big player in illness in general, as your gut health is at the root of your health. 85% of people in Western society have leaky gut. Number 3, you have to have triggers. And there are a lot of different triggers, and I've recorded a webinar on autoimmune if you're interested. I didn't want to get into all of that education here. If you are in my programs, you are very educated because you must understand how you got here and how to keep yourself from getting here again. So there are webinars out there and I will give you information on how to contact me later if you're interested in that webinar. Healing autoimmune is a very structured process, and first we have to fix your lifestyle factors as they are at the basis of your health. We heal your leaky gut and figure out what triggers you might have and eliminate them. And it can be a very quick process, but for most it can take a while. And it really depends on how much of an onion you are. And there is structure to the peeling of the onion. And I've said many, many times, I have been an onion to peel, which leads us into my story. So let's go ahead and talk about that. I'm from Canada originally, rural Canada actually, and life was pretty simple there. And we ate very healthy. It was a meat and veggies kind of life with lots of veggies from the garden, and treats like desserts were homemade using berries that were grown or picked in the wild. And the desserts really weren't a staple. But the point is, I had a really good start from a food perspective, and there wasn't a lot of stress. It was simple. Life was simple, and we were an active family. So lots of exercise. And as a kid, it wasn't understood that I had dairy issues. So I did get tonsillitis a lot, probably from the dairy. So lots of antibiotics, but other than that, healthy. And we moved when I was 7, and then again when I was 8, and we landed in the Toronto area, and the healthy way of eating continued for the most part, although my mom was very busy with work and other activities, so TV dinners started to move into our eating repertoire. But other than that, still pretty much meat and veggies. And that lasted until I was about 12. And at that time, Mom and I discovered Tostitos. They were amazing. Every night after school, we would watch The Young and the Restless and Star Trek while eating Tostitos. And we both had a significant sweet tooth, so chocolate bars were a pretty steady treat. But at 15, I did get a job and I had my own money, and lunches were no longer homemade. I was eating French fries and ice cream sandwiches for lunch at school that I was able to buy in the school cafeteria, and the healthy diet was being traded off for crap food. And with this, I was creating inflammation in my body, and my gut microbiome was declining. At 15, we made a very significant move as a family from Toronto to Texas, and I'm still feeling the effects of that move. Just saying. It was very stressful on all of us, and I think it was also too much for my system, and I developed allergies almost instantly to when they tested me. I'm sure it was close to about 40 different things environmentally, and then there were some food allergies as well. So I've heard of this happening for others when they do move, and I used to think it was due to the change, but I think it has more to do with the stress on the body and the lack of healthy support. And with the allergies, I was struggling with that. With what the doctors thought was tonsillitis because of my history when I was younger. And I had it for 6 months, and they couldn't get rid of it long enough for me to have the operation to remove the tonsils. So they put me on antibiotics for 6 months just to get me healthy enough to take out my tonsils. So again, more antibiotics. And you're going to find that this is a pretty significant, it weaves through my life, antibiotics. So why is that significant? Because one round of antibiotics, just one, can wipe out the balance of your microbiome for a year. And it takes a year to recover. And I had 6 months worth. So that was like 12 rounds of antibiotics, so much so that I developed a reaction to penicillin, because they'd also given me a couple of penicillin shots at that time too. So what I know now is that I didn't just have tonsillitis. I had EBV, which stands for Epstein-Barr virus, or mono, which I'm sure was also due to the stress of the move, and it masks itself with throat infections. And how do I know that? Because 50% of people that have Hashimoto's thyroiditis have had or have Epstein-Barr virus. And so when I tested for that, I don't have it as active in my system, but I do have the antibodies for it. So that is a test that we will run sometimes on people that do have Hashimoto's. So once my tonsils were removed, I recovered somewhat, but I was still injecting myself twice a week in the leg to deal with allergies, and they were not getting better. Of course they weren't. And we were not eating healthy like we did when I was younger. The inflammation was continuing, and my microbiome was not supported. I ended up with a very significant bacterial stomach infection in my late teens that wiped me out pretty good, and of course more antibiotics. So from here, I started developing significant stomach issues, and I can remember getting pains in my gut so severe that it doubled me over and I couldn't walk. And sometimes it took me to my knees. And of course, the doctors found nothing. And I suspect I developed severe food allergies at this point, which is part of what happens after you have leaky gut. And I was starting to get unexplained rashes and hives that, of course, they found nothing to cause this either. And that was my life in my 20s. By the time I had reached 30, I had delivered both of my children, and I was exercising regularly and starting to eat much healthier. And my body fat was probably around to about 10%, which was probably also very stressful on my body. The relationship I was in wasn't great. It was traumatic, actually. And I started developing heart skipping and breathing issues. And my allergies were developing into asthma. And I was starting to have significant brain fog and weird here, but not here kind of experiences. And by the time I was 35, I'd already had 3 stress tests for my heart. I was on beta blockers to reduce my blood pressure, but they were reducing my blood pressure so low that I could barely function. So I could no longer take my allergy medicine or the blood pressure medicine, and the birth control pills that I was on to help manage sort of a lot of other things that were going on. Those were having to be stopped. And we were just with the shooting in the dark with the medical community to find any answer to what was going on, but getting nowhere. And everything just kept morphing, and I was picking up new symptoms. And so by the time I was 40, I was divorced. Thank goodness. And with the removal of stress, there was some improvement. They took me off, as I said, all that medicine, but without the birth control pills, my menstrual cycle had gotten so significant that I was going through 40 tampons in 2 days at the beginning of every cycle. And I did that for 10 years. And my body was so sick for 3 weeks every month just to deal with this crazy bloodletting. And it just continued. And I had asthmatic coughing fits every night before bed. I couldn't get enough sleep, so I would sleep 20 hours straight on the weekend just to have enough energy to make it through my week. And my allergies weren't getting better. And quite honestly, the doctors were baffled. And how many of you, like, you may not exactly have my story, but you've lived similar stories, right? So in 2012, I went home to see my grandmother, and I ended up in the hospital, and I knew it was my gallbladder. And this is an issue with Hashis. We'll talk about that in a minute. And before I would let my family take me to the hospital, I did the research. I did 12 hours of research. And when I got to the hospital, the pain was so significant. I was laying on the floor of the emergency room just to try to be comfortable. But I refused to go there because there was no way I was going to put myself in the hands of people that just wanted to take my gallbladder without understanding the ramifications of that. So when I was finally able to see the doctor, it was 10:03 p.m. and I know this. He wanted to take my gallbladder, but in that moment, I hit my no more. I said, no, no more. And I said, just give me enough to get me home, because I didn't want to do this anymore. It was just one more thing. And along the way, I'd also developed a reaction to narcotic painkillers, but thank you, Canada, for offering me a non-narcotic that worked. It was wonderful. And they gave me some antibiotics and sent me home. More antibiotics, but I had to have them. And it helped enough to get me home. And I changed my world at that point. I'd had enough. And I realized that I couldn't just do this that I'd been doing. I was living the definition of insanity. And it took me a long time to realize that you can't exercise your way to health, but I had realized it in this moment because it hadn't been working up to this point. So no more living the definition of insanity, no more beating my head against a wall. I changed my eating. I didn't eliminate gluten at this time because I didn't understand that I had Hashis yet or understand the effects of gluten. What I did understand was meat and veggies. So that's what I did. And I've talked about this. I use the Arbonne products because they are clean and they taste relatively well. And I put myself on their program and along with the healthier eating, and man, it was amazing. And I got some of my energy back and I felt so much better. I had saved my gallbladder and I was thankful for my decision to do that. And I'm not saying that can be a choice for everyone because you may have gallstones, which would not make my decision possible for you. But this was a great decision for me in my no more. But my health issues weren't done. My body had it with what I'd done to it. And I do say what I'd done to it because the reality is I may not have been educated enough to understand what I was doing, but I knew I wasn't being healthy and my body was talking to me. I chose to ignore those whispers. And with that last round of antibiotics, I had developed a full body yeast infection. I had constant vaginal yeast infections and urinary tract infections. And I'd been round after round into the doctor. So more antibiotics every time I went in there, making the situation worse. And did I understand that? No. But finally, I went to Planned Parenthood because I figured they specialized in this area of things. And the doctor there actually listened to me, and she was determined to figure this out. She pulled my eyelid down to see what color my eyelids were. And if you do that, they should be pink, and mine were completely white. And so they immediately tested my hemoglobin, and it was only 60% of where it should be. And because of that, I had to make an immediate appointment with an OBGYN who I hadn't been to for years because I was getting nowhere. And of course, the first response of this doctor was to want to take all my lady parts to stop the bleeding. But thankfully, I had bled so much with my cycle that I had exhausted all the stores of iron in my body, which was contributing to my exhaustion, which was contributing to my hair loss. And I was having all kinds of weird symptoms like cotton mouth, and everything was tasting salty, and I was having a reaction to mint, and on and on and on. So they just couldn't put me under to do the surgery. They were concerned I would have a heart attack or a stroke. And so they decided they were going to do an ablation. So I was so thankful for this because I knew they wouldn't listen. They were just going to do that. And this kind of saved me. So I got to keep my lady parts, and they decided to do an ablation. So what is an ablation? So that means they're going to cauterize the lining of my uterus and hope that the bleeding would stop. And I said, great. And so another thing to be aware of if you have autoimmune, particularly Hashimoto's, is that over time you may have developed to where the Novocaine and the lidocaine don't exactly work anymore. And of course they didn't listen. So they said, don't worry about it. It didn't work. They also gave me narcotic painkillers after I told them not to. So it was an interesting event. So why do I say that to you, ladies? Because you never stop advocating for yourself. If the doctor does not listen to you, you go find another doctor. So anyway, I went through the ablation, felt everything. I had a wonderful mouth that day. And I know how to use it, and they had to listen to it all. And then I sat there laying in the recovery room for 3 hours because I was in so much pain. But I finally checked myself out to get myself home. I crawled to the toilet 7 times to puke because of those painkillers that they gave me. But what I want to say is I woke up the next day and I felt so much better. And no matter what, it was all worth it. Despite that idiot doctor, everything was worth it. And the bleeding stopped. So I immediately moved into menopause. I was thrilled. I then moved to tackle my whole body yeast infection, and I felt amazing. Did I know that I had Hashimoto's at this point? No. So I just wanted to move further into diving into what might be going on. So I tested my hormones, and lo and behold, my antibodies were over 800. They were supposed to be below 10. I had Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And now I'm thinking, thank you. And I know not all of you that have had that diagnosis feel that way, feel grateful. I was grateful. And I will tell you in a minute, I wasn't always grateful, but I was grateful because now I have something I can research and I can learn about. And that answered a lot of questions. And when I started doing the investigative work on Hashimoto's, everything I had experienced, everything was on the list of symptoms for Hashies. And I'd had it for years and years. There are 5 stages to autoimmune. It takes a long time for a body to work through those stages. And all of these symptoms were just the development and the movement through those stages. And the reality is, until you hit phase 3 of autoimmune, and you may be having symptoms for years, you may not actually show any difficulties or any variation in your test results. It's just your body starting to respond to what's going on. So for years and years, how many of you are experiencing these kind of morphing symptoms? Not once did anyone suggest testing my thyroid. And I just want to say that even though they had, most doctors don't know how to test a thyroid for the right markers, nor how to read the results. So I was thankful. I wasn't thankful through every bit of the healing process, but I am thankful for my resilience. It was a crazy journey of almost 30 years. And I know that was a long story, but I want you to know you aren't alone. That's why I told it. I want you to know that if you're experiencing these kinds of things, your body is talking to you. And I know many of you have been at this too long with no good answers. So what came next? Well, education. I was over the doctors and I had to figure this out. I was fortunate to be introduced to an MD that had recently converted to functional medicine. So I did spend time with her, but I still didn't want to rely on her. I'd been let down too many times and I had to be my own advocate, and I was on a mission. And those of you that know me understand that. When I'm on a mission, there is nobody that's going to stop me. I am going to figure this out. I'd also met another woman named Marisa Wandeler, who has also been on this autoimmune series talking about trauma and her own autoimmune journey. And she is a few years ahead of me with her autoimmune healing journey. And she gave me some really good resources. And it started me on a life's journey, really. I mean, it's taken me a while to sort of figure out what my passion is and what I am to do. But this whole thing started me on my journey. So I mentioned earlier that I'd started with diet, and it's a foundation to start. And it allowed me to cut my numbers almost immediately from the 800s to the 300s. And I felt better. I felt so much better. But my numbers started to climb again, even with the elimination of gluten. And I did start medication. I started medication at the recommendation of the doctor that I mentioned. And you know, I was willing to do that. I knew that my numbers were getting high enough that I could help myself to feel a lot better by doing that. Not everyone will make that choice. I just chose to. So my numbers were rising, but again, I'm on a mission. I wanted to figure this out. So I started looking, and at the same time, I decided I could help other women because I was feeling good enough that I had my life back. It may not be to the level that I had been at one time, but my life, I had it back. And I decided I could help other women that were in my shoes because it sucks so bad to be in that place, but I needed a certification to stand behind me. So the very next day, this program popped up on my computer, strangely. It was FDN, which is Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. And when I talked to them, they said it was the last piece of the puzzle, and it is. So I finished the program in 6 months, but I put myself through the program and launched my business, and Your Health Made Simple was born. Now, every time I get on here to do this, my nose starts itching. It's weird, and I know it's a psychological thing. And right now my nose is itching. 1 second. I'm not going to do this to you on the screen. Hold on 1 second. Oh, my goodness. Oh. Okay, I am back. Sorry about that. It's just the weirdest damn thing. And I am so sorry, but it just is part of life. All right, so my business is my passion. It is estimated that there are about 30 million of us with Hashimoto's. Because why so high? Because maybe about 17 or 18 or 20 million are actually diagnosed, but how many of you are out there struggling in the early phases of autoimmune and the doctors haven't figured it out yet? So the estimation is around 30 million. It is the number one in terms of the number of people that have it. Now my ear is itching. Go figure. With autoimmune. So 80%, and now my face is itching. Okay, 80% of them are women. And there is a reason it's a women's disease. Women put themselves on the back burner of their lives to give their best to those they love, their jobs, their friends, people in need. And women struggle with 50% higher job stress than men. And I could go on and on about this. Women do not make themselves a priority. And because we are this way as a whole, we are going to get sicker and sicker because of the level of stress, because of the way we eat, because of the way we sleep, the way we burn the candle at both ends. And guess what, guys? It's not okay. It is time for a women's health revolution, ladies, and I'm on a mission to educate you about what is required for you to be healthy and to help those with Hashimoto's regain their energy and take back your quality of life. So how do I help women take back their energy and their quality of life with Hashis? Well, what I didn't want to do was have a business or a program that played pin the tail on the donkey, like sticking that pin on the tail, on the donkey's ass, hoping to hit that tail. No. Healing is a structured process, starting with the foundation, the lifestyle factors. And this starts the process of healing your gut, feeding your cells the right way, and increasing your energy. And if you don't fix them, nothing else you do will matter. And it's not a temporary fixing. Being healthy is a lifestyle. And this is the biggest hang up for most women. But if you can't get it mastered, there is no reason to spend your money in bigger programs, in my bigger programs, in anyone's bigger programs. Everyone starts at the foundation, and you can't move on until you build that foundation the right way. So the next step beyond the foundation, the lifestyle factors, is to determine your triggers. And there is structure in determining your triggers too. You just don't want to be out there taking this test, taking that test, because if you're working on healing like metals that are stored in your tissues, guess what? Anything you do isn't going to work until you've fixed any gut infections. Just isn't going to happen. So this is why there's structured healing. So what do we start with? We start with testing your hormones. We test your food sensitivities and the health of your microbiome. And we spend a lot of time here supporting the body with supplements because it can't heal without them. And I know there's a big thing about supplements just being an income generator. And I'm going to tell you, if you don't need them, I'm not going to recommend them for you. I don't work that way. But if you do, your body won't heal without them. Some of them are temporary, some will be permanent, but what they do is replace what you don't have, or they support in your body what you're lacking, and they help your body heal itself. And what's so cool about the healing process is when you support your body the right way, your body heals. It just needs a little help sometimes. So many times, this isn't enough. There may be other triggers and additional testing that may be required, but we do get to the bottom of it. And a question you might have is, have I gotten to the bottom of all of my triggers? So for the most part, yes, but I'm not in remission. Been at this a while. I have a burned in stress response, and I'm type A. I'm also tackling trauma triggers, which can be a very big player. And I know when my body's stressed, I'm just increasing the inflammation in my gut, and I haven't been able to heal it all the way. I'm still working on it, but it's important to me, and I'm making progress in my numbers. I'm continuing to make that progress, which is good. So my ultimate goal is remission. And that means my antibodies should be below 10. I'm at 154 right now, but I will get there. I was at over 800, but the reality is that in this process, I feel great. I'm doing things I never ever thought I would be able to do. Again, like playing softball on a co-ed team, or kayaking, or snowshoeing. I am present with my family. I have energy. I take time to manage my stress most of the time. If you saw my webinar with Travis Rumsey, you know that I'm not the best at it, but I work on it. And I'm so passionate about what I do. So helping guide my clients back to themselves and their quality of life is so fulfilling to me. Teaching women what they must prioritize, themselves and their health, to be able to give their best to the people in their lives. That's my mission. And I've talked your ears off. So I think I'm going to stop talking now. But I do want to mention a little bit about the healing process, because I talk about it like I've just been this trooper that has just moved through it. The reality is for a lot of people, because it can take a while, that every time you get a test back and your test results may be discouraging. And I went through that. I went through getting those test results back and having a pity party, crying because, my God, I'd worked so hard. Have I not done better? And you know, the test results kind of tell you what's going on in your body. But the other thing that we pay a lot of attention to is how you feel. So if you're starting to feel great and you're getting your energy back, then that's awesome, right? We may just have a little bit more work to do. So there may be another test that we need to run to figure out, okay, we've tackled those infections in your gut, but maybe you are storing some environmental toxins. Maybe you do have some mycotoxins, like you've had mold exposure. Maybe you're dealing with amalgams, like fillings, silver fillings that you got when you were a kid that are producing mercury every time you're chewing, that your body is absorbing, that your body is having trouble detoxing. So, you know, when I went and took a look at my mercury levels because of the amalgams that I had, my mercury levels in my body, I don't know why I'm having trouble saying mercury levels in my body, were 8 times what they should have been. So it took me a couple of rounds to get that down. And I'm not saying go out and get your amalgams out, ladies. No, 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 because in the process of doing that with a standard dentist, you're going to struggle. You're going to probably have a lot of exposure to a lot more mercury while they're trying to get rid of those amalgams. So there are specific dentists that you want to work with to get that done. So I'm saying you don't do that. You got to prep your body before you do that. So, yeah, the healing process, but it can be a struggle, but there's so much growth in the healing process in terms of what you learn, how to listen to your body, and to be able to go back through your history to determine when it all started and how you've gotten to the place that you're in, and how you're not going to do it again. And so there is so much growth in that process. As hard as it is, there is great things to be thankful for. So I just wanted you to be aware of that as well. So I also want to let you know that you aren't alone and to give you hope that healing is possible, but you probably aren't going to find it in the doctor's office if you haven't already. And if you have, and they've told you that the medication is enough for you, I'm here to tell you it's not. The medication masks, it does help support the thyroid, but you haven't fixed all the other things that are going on in your system. You haven't eliminated your triggers. You haven't healed your leaky gut. So what that means is you're still progressing through the illness, and eventually you will develop other autoimmune diseases because all those symptoms that I talked about that I had earlier were just morphing of movement through the systems in my body as systems start to break down. And your systems will continue to break down. And as you continue adding inflammation and your immune system continues to fire, it's going to go after your next weakest links in your genetics. So you will develop other autoimmune diseases. So the earlier you can tackle this, the better. The easier it's going to be, the less you have to work. The longer you wait, the harder you do have to work to get back to a normal. And it won't be the normal that you started at. It'll be a new normal, but you can take your quality of life back. So I am in the process. Sorry, I wanted to say sadly, the doctors are about 15 years behind the functional medicine community, but some of them are starting to catch on, which is awesome. So if you have one of those doctors, good for you. Just remember that you do have to tackle your leaky gut and your triggers to make sure that you are in a good place of health. Not the medication alone isn't enough, okay? So I am in the process of lining up a couple more speakers. I have discovered something amazing, and I want to get her lined up before I announce that one. I also have a date for the rep from the Microbiome Labs to come in and chat about gut health and their company. So if you think you know a lot about probiotics and you're taking some probiotics that you're out there buying, I want you to open your mind and consider the fact that you don't know enough about probiotics. And she's going to talk to us about that. There is so much to share. She's also going to talk about the new tests that they have for the microbiome. They are so different than every other test out there. So I no longer use the old tests. I have converted in my test series to include their new test called BiomeFX. It gives us a look at the microbiome that you have never seen. So she has so much to share, and I never thought this little webinar series would actually continue for so long. It's all good stuff, and I really thank you for being here. Also, don't, like I said, I'm going to go have the little question session here for about 15 minutes as soon as I sign off. So if you've got questions, please stay on the Facebook Live. I will stop recording, but I will step in there to kind of work through that with you guys. And because you're my mission, please don't ever hesitate to reach out. You ladies really are my passion, my mission in life. I am always happy to talk through your struggles and what is possible. So how do you get in touch with me? Well, you can go onto my website, which is yourhealthmadesimple.com, and you can hit Vitality Breakthrough Session and schedule a time to talk to me. Or you can reach me through our email, which is clientcare@yourhealthmadesimple.com. I'm always here for you. It is important to me that we change the health of women in Western society. And, we just got to do it one at a time. And the more we reach, the more I'm able to reach, the happier I am with what I feel that I'm here to do. So thank you for being here. See you again soon. I'm going to step over into the Facebook page and see what kind of questions we got going on there. So don't disappear if that's what you're interested in doing right now. Okay, stop recording, moving on to the Facebook page. Thanks, everyone.